Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When rancher John Westfield returned home, he didn't expect to find a playground on his land. What began as a mysterious intrusion by a suburban HOA spiraled into a high-stakes war over property power and one man's fight to protect what was his. This is how it all unraveled. It started with a weird shadow on the hill. I'd just gotten back from a cattle equipment expo out in Austin, 3 weeks on the road with only my farm manager Tom checking in once a day. 5,000 acres ain't easy to babysit, but with a decent crew and good fencing, I usually sleep just fine when I'm gone. But that morning, as I sipped bitter motel coffee in the cab of my truck and finally crested the slope overlooking the southeast quadrant of my land, I spotted something that made me slam the brakes. Benches, painted white, bolted into the earth, arranged in tidy little semicircles like something out of a suburb brochure. There were manicured walking paths too, snaking through my pasture like a damn botanical garden. I even saw what looked like a jungle gym in the distance, a playground on my land. I put the truck in park and got out, boots sinking into the freshly laid mulch. The smell hit me next. Fresh bark, new grass seed, those synthetic rubber tiles people use under swings. The ground looked designed, not farmed, not wild, just suburbanized. I scanned the area for signs, and sure enough, nailed to a fresh post stuck into my own damn earth was a polished plaque. Willow Ridge Community Park, residents only. My eyebrows practically hit my hat brim. Willow Ridge, the new HOA development that had been creeping like mold on the north side of my property for the last 5 years. Bunch of vinyl-sided clones stacked like Legos, overseen by a pack of clipboard warriors led by a woman named Karen Morton. I'd met her once. She tried to tell me to trim my windbreak pines because they were casting shadow over HOA lots. I told her if she didn't like shadows, maybe she should have picked a sunnier zip code. I walked further in. My boots kicked up some turf still laid in strips. This was recent, maybe a week or two tops. And then I saw a guy, vest, clipboard, polo shirt, name badge, barking orders at 2 younger dudes who were installing a solar path light. "Hey," I said, approaching with a level voice. "You know where you are?" The guy looked up, startled. Willow Ridge Park, Phase 2. Why? Because this isn't Willow Ridge. This is Westfield Ranch. My ranch. Private property. He blinked. "We have the coordinates from the site plan." It matched the design grid approved by the board. What board? Willow Ridge HOA Development Committee. I took a breath. You ever heard of checking a deed before sinking playground equipment into someone else's pasture? He stammered something about subcontractors and pre-approved maps. I told him to pack it in and stop work immediately. He didn't argue, but he didn't obey either, just stared like I'd spoken Greek. I got back in the truck and drove straight to the county recorder's office. 2 hours later, I had what I needed, a certified copy of the original deed and the current GIS parcel overlay. Clear boundaries, no easements, no transfers. That patch of land was mine, had always been mine since my grandfather carved it out of mesquite scrub with his own hands. I sent emails. I left voicemails. I even walked into the HOA's so-called administrative office, really just a leased space in the strip mall next to a tanning salon. The woman at the front desk, barely 20, told me the HOA chair was unavailable and that all correspondence had to be submitted in writing. I submitted it, loud and clear, along with a copy of the deed and a polite request for an explanation. Then I waited and waited. A week passed. The benches stayed. The playground got painted. I even spotted a couple toddlers in tiny sneakers waddling around like this was Disney World. No fences, no permissions, no acknowledgement that they were trespassing. Every day they expanded the damn thing. More wood chips, more landscaping. At one point, I saw a guy with a goddamn pressure washer. I wasn't a man prone to temper. Army taught me that. But this was deliberate. It wasn't a mistake or a mapping error. Someone had taken a good long look at my land and thought, no one will notice. They figured 5,000 acres meant I wouldn't miss 11. That's when I stopped waiting for answers and started preparing for war. I didn't sleep that night. I kept picturing those benches, the chipped green paint on the monkey bars, the damn sign that told me, in my own backyard, that I wasn't welcome. So at sunrise, I got to work. First, I pulled out my old steel cattle fence panels, the kind I'd used for breaking bulls back in my rodeo days, and loaded them into the truck. They weren't pretty, but they were heavy and solid, and they sent a message. I drove back out to that same patch of land, parked crosswise to block the playground entrance, and started setting up the panels in a wide half circle around the park's edge. When I was done, I mounted a fresh aluminum sign, dead center. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. It felt good, like putting your boots down and daring someone to say otherwise. By noon, the fence was already tampered with. One of the panels had been moved, dragged maybe 5 feet off to the side. Not knocked over, not broken, just enough to make room for a stroller to get through. They were testing me. I drove straight to the sheriff's department and filed a complaint. Officer Bergman, a no-nonsense local who knew me from my Army days, nodded as he took down the details. He said they'd patrol when they could, but that it sounded civil, not criminal. "Until someone gets hurt," I muttered. "Or until you sue the crap out of them," he replied. I was halfway home when I got a call from Tom, my foreman. "You need to see this, boss," he said, his voice clipped. I turned around and headed back to the eastern slope. By the time I pulled up, I could see a small crowd gathering by the playground. A woman with a yoga mat over her shoulder and a double stroller was standing in front of my sign, pointing at it while talking to some guy in golf shorts. 2 kids were already swinging. I stepped out of the truck and made a beeline for the group. "Ma'am," I said, "did you not see the sign?" She didn't even flinch. I did. And I also saw this same park on the HOA map that was sent to every resident last month. Maybe you should check with them before putting up threats. Threats? I raised an eyebrow. "Lady, you're on private agricultural land. This isn't your backyard picnic area. This isn't even part of your neighborhood." The guy in golf shorts stepped forward, arms crossed. "Then why has it been open for months? Why did our HOA say it was approved green space? Because your HOA is either lying or too lazy to read a land registry," I shot back. That's when she took out her phone and started recording. "You're being very aggressive, sir. This is a public safety concern now. You're threatening families." "No, ma'am. I'm protecting my land. And if you think that's a threat, maybe you should call the sheriff and ask how they feel about trespassing with toddlers." She turned and walked away, still recording, muttering about viral moments and next door posts. I didn't care. Let the world see me defending what's mine. But I knew where this was going. That evening, I reviewed the footage from the trail cameras I'd hidden in the oaks near the ridge. One clip caught 2 HOA board members, identifiable by their branded shirts and clipboards, walking along the playground edge, discussing how to deal with that ranch guy. One of them said, "Just remove the fence at night. He'll give up once the residents complain. Enough, I didn't give up." I added motion-activated floodlights and posted a second sign, "Under 24-hour surveillance." Then I waited. The next day, I received a letter, hand-delivered, no envelope, from the Willow Ridge HOA. It was printed on fake parchment stationery with a gold-embossed header that looked like something from a community theater. "Dear Mr. Westfield, it has come to our attention that your recent installation of fencing and signage interferes with community amenities planned and approved by Willow Ridge HOA in accordance with neighborhood beautification objectives. We respectfully request that you cease obstruction of shared facilities and remove any barriers within 5 days to avoid legal escalation." Legal escalation? I laughed out loud. Then I took a red pen and wrote, in all caps, across the letter, "This is private land. Cease trespassing immediately." I scanned it, printed 10 copies, and stapled them to every panel of my fence. The next morning, 2 mothers tore one down and walked straight through with their toddlers. One of them glared at my security camera and flipped at the bird. By that afternoon, I had a call from the sheriff's department. Someone had reported me for aggressive behavior toward families. Officer Bergman came out again. I showed him the footage, the trespassing, the vandalism, the letter from the HOA. He sighed. "Legally, you're clean, John. But this is going to get messy. These folks think they're entitled to that land because it looks like a park. It doesn't matter if it's yours. They're used to getting their way." "I don't care what they're used to," I said. "They're trespassing, and they're going to pay for it." That night, someone stole 2 fence panels. I replaced them with steel gates and reinforced posts. If they wanted a fight, I was ready to escalate. By the end of that week, I had a lawyer. His name was Rick Calhoun, former JAG officer, now property rights attorney out of Fort Worth. Wore bolo ties without irony and had the kind of no-bullshit demeanor that made people like Karen sweat through their blouse buttons. First thing he did was walk the perimeter with me, clipboard in hand, muttering legal jargon and shaking his head every 30 seconds. "This isn't a gray area," he said finally, stopping next to the playground's swing set. This is black and white trespassing, unauthorized construction, potential fraud if anyone signed off on this knowing it wasn't their land. I figured as much. You got title deeds? Original and certified copies. From my grandfather's probate all the way to current day, I'll bury them in your office if I have to. Rick grinned. That's what I like to hear. He filed an emergency cease and desist letter to the HOA that same afternoon, sent it certified mail, email, fax, and dropped off a hard copy at their administrative headquarters, which still looked like a fake insurance office from a low-budget soap opera. We even had the sheriff's office timestamp a copy for good measure. 3 days later, we got a response. It was a packet, nearly 20 pages, stuffed with zoning maps, HOA resolutions, signatures from their board, and a scanned land use acknowledgement form with a signature that read John W. Westfield in wobbly cursive that looked like it had been copied from a 5-year-old's drawing. I never signed this, I said, staring at the document. Rick pulled it from my hands, flipped to the metadata page. Scan date 6 months ago, he said. Filed under public easement review. This is a bad forgery. Tell me it's criminal. It's criminal, he said, and I know just who to talk to. We added fraudulent land use authorization to the growing list of legal claims. Rick also filed for a temporary injunction to freeze all development on the disputed portion of land. In the meantime, I started gathering my own proof. I reviewed every second of trail cam footage, documented every vehicle that crossed the boundary, took photos of construction equipment, garden lighting, trash bins with HOA logos, even one kid's lost Crocs sandal halfway into my irrigation trench. But that wasn't the best part. The best part came on a drizzly Thursday morning when I got an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name printed in block caps. Inside were 3 color printouts, blurry screenshots from what looked like internal emails. At the top, from Karen Morton. Subject line, Eastern Slope, fast track. One line jumped off the page like a bullet to the brain. If we move quickly, he won't notice. It's mostly empty scrub. No one uses it anyway. That was it. That was the smoking gun. I forwarded the images to Rick. He called me within the hour, practically vibrating with excitement. She admitted intent. That's malicious occupation. We can blow this wide open, do it. We called a local news reporter, Rachel Singh, small town beat, hungry for something juicy. She came out with a cameraman and interviewed me on the edge of the disputed land, my weathered cowboy hat casting shadow over the freshly laid mulch of the illegal park. I held up the forged signature and the anonymous email screenshots. Told the story plain and slow. Didn't yell, didn't grandstand. Just let the truth do the heavy lifting. The story aired that night. Title, HOA built park on private land without permission. Rancher fights back. It went viral within 24 hours. Next thing I knew, my inbox was full. Strangers sending legal advice. HOA horror stories, offers to testify. Even a retired land surveyor who offered to come measure the lot line pro bono just for the pleasure of sticking it to those HOA bastards. But not everyone was happy. The Willow Ridge community page exploded. Someone posted a blurry picture of me with a caption, "This is the man who wants to bulldoze our park." People called me selfish, greedy. One woman claimed I was hoarding land and depriving the community of sunshine and green space. I didn't care. Then someone started leaving garbage bags on my driveway. Another time, I found my mailbox stuffed with wet mulch. One evening, I caught a teen trying to unscrew one of my new security cameras. I didn't press charges, yet, but I filed every police report, documented every incident, stored every video. Karen, meanwhile, had gone radio silent. No public statements, no responses, not even a generic HOA update email, which meant one thing: she was scrambling. Rick scheduled a preliminary hearing with the county court for the injunction. We'd get to present the documents, the false signature, the land records, everything. But the night before the hearing, someone cut through my fence. Not climbed, not pulled apart. Clean cut with bolt cutters. I found a broken pair of child sunglasses lying near the breach. The swing set chains were still swinging. They wanted to make it look like it was business as usual, that no matter what I did, they could just take. Rick told me to stay cool. I installed motion sensors and floodlights, buried metal posts under the topsoil. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. This was war. The morning of the hearing, I shaved, pressed my best shirt, and loaded a thumb drive with every goddamn piece of evidence I had: drone footage, title deeds, the forged authorization form, the anonymous emails from Karen, even a video of a man in flip-flops walking his labradoodle directly past my private property sign while sipping a mimosa out of a mason jar. The courthouse was small, old-fashioned, paint peeling on the columns, the American flag a little sun-faded. I liked it. Real place, real stakes. No HOA fancy nonsense. Rick was already inside when I got there, sorting documents with surgical precision. Karen showed up late, flanked by 2 attorneys in overpriced suits and 2 white teeth. She wore a beige blazer and her signature smugness, like she was headed to a golf fundraiser for HOA Presidents Anonymous. The judge, gruff, no-nonsense type named Holbrook, opened the session with a brief nod, clearly not interested in theatrics. Good. Neither was I. Rick started simple. Deed. Survey parcel ID. Photos from before the park was built. Just pasture and scrub. Then, the forged signature. Then, the email from Karen. Then, the updated footage showing construction expanding deeper onto my land, even after the cease and desist letter was delivered. Karen's team tried to counter with some story about historical access usage, that the land was ambiguous due to old boundary lines from the original subdivision, said they'd received implied consent from the community due to a lack of fencing. Holbrook interrupted them. Implied consent doesn't override registered title, he said flatly, especially not when there's evidence of forged documents. Karen's expression cracked right then. A twitch around the corner of her mouth, like her Botox was considering mutiny. The judge granted the temporary injunction, ordering immediate cessation of all use of the park, and ordered a third-party land survey within 72 hours. Anyone entering the land during that period would be considered trespassing and subject to arrest. That should have been the end of it. But that evening, as I was locking the gate, a woman pulled up in a minivan with a kid in the back. "You're really doing this," she shouted out the window. "My son has sensory issues. This park was the only place close enough for him to feel safe." I blinked. "Ma'am, I didn't build this park. Your HOA did. On land they don't own. You could have just shared," she yelled, her voice cracking. "You're not even using this part." I watched her drive off, dust cloud rising behind her. By the next morning, HOA volunteers had plastered flyers all over my mailbox, gate, and fence posts. "John Westfield is destroying our children's park. Tell him to do the right thing." The community Facebook group was on fire. Posts accusing me of hating kids, hating veterans, don't ask, hating dogs, hating hope itself. One post had my face photoshopped onto a wanted poster. Another called me the Rancher of Rage. People started honking as they drove by. Some friendly, some sarcastic. One guy yelled "land hog" out of the window while flipping a burger into my driveway. They even organized a peaceful protest just outside my gate. It was 30 people with signs like "land should be shared" and "community over property." One woman had a baby strapped to her chest while holding a sign that said, "I was born on this park." I stayed calm, called the sheriff. Deputies showed up and reminded the group they were on the edge of private property. Most of them left. A few yelled legal threats. One tried to block my truck and got cited for disorderly conduct. Rick told me to hold the line. "They're trying to make you snap," he said. "Don't give them what they want." But they escalated. Someone started parking old furniture along my fence, a passive-aggressive garbage dump, broken lawn chairs, a busted swing set, even a fake Christmas reindeer with a note stapled to it. This used to bring joy to children. Hope you're proud. That weekend, local media returned. Rachel Singh, again, asking for a follow-up. She interviewed some Willow Ridge parents, including a tearful mother who claimed I'd turned a haven into a battlefield. I asked if they wanted to film the damaged fence, the stolen panels, the shredded warning signs. They declined, so I posted it all myself. I made a page. "This land is mine." Uploaded drone footage with overlays showing the parcel boundaries, photos of the forged documents, time-stamped cease and desist letters, videos of people pulling their kids across the boundary with smug little grins like I was some Scrooge trying to steal Christmas. The page took off. Thousands of views. Dozens of supportive messages from other property owners who'd had run-ins with HOAs. One guy from Arizona offered to ship me a roll of barbed wire on the house. But the biggest surprise came through email. A message with the subject line, Whistleblower, HOA Board. It was from a woman named Danielle, treasurer of Willow Ridge. She said she'd voted against the park expansion but was shut down by Karen and her inner circle. Claimed they'd overstepped budget allocations, falsified permit dates, and brushed off warnings about land ownership issues. She offered to talk. Rick arranged a meeting. And just like that, we had an insider, a fracture in the HOA. Finally, Danielle wasn't what I expected. She showed up in jeans and a cardigan, no makeup, clutching a brown leather notebook like it was armor. We met in Rick's office, neutral ground, and she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I just want to say, I didn't agree with any of this, she started. Karen railroaded the vote, said it was a strategic beautification asset that would raise property values and show initiative during HOA elections. Beautification? I asked. Is that what they call land theft now? She winced. I tried to raise the question about ownership during the second board meeting. Karen said the developer's map had implied continuity and that they'd clean it up later. Clean it up, I muttered. That explains a lot. Danielle handed over her notebook. Inside were minutes from internal meetings, her own records, not the sanitized versions sent to HOA members, multiple mentions of expansion into fringe lots, and low risk of retaliation. Rick's eyes lit up like it was Christmas. "This is gold," he said. "Any chance you'd testify?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'm done protecting them. I moved here for peace. This whole thing has become cultish. With her testimony, Rick amended our lawsuit. Now it wasn't just trespass and fraud. It was conspiracy to misappropriate private land. The moment the updated complaint went public, everything changed." Karen broke her silence. She published a letter in the Willow Ridge newsletter titled A Time for Truth, where she claimed I was weaponizing litigation to destroy a community resource, accused me of abusing legal loopholes, and, my personal favorite, called me an unstable, aggressive land baron whose unchecked power threatens community harmony, a land baron. That one made me laugh. I had 2 tractors and a goat named Cletus that screams at possums. Real empire builder stuff, but the community took it seriously. The division widened. Some residents sided with me. They saw the documents, the maps, the whistleblower notes. Others doubled down, claiming I had set a trap to sabotage the park. And then came the fire. It was 3 in the morning when the motion sensor lights lit up. I was already awake, writing an affidavit for Rick. When the floodlights came on, I checked the live feed on my phone. Flames. One of the old barns on the eastern edge, an equipment shed, mostly empty, was on fire. The dry summer grass carried it fast, and by the time I ran out with the extinguisher, the corner wall had already collapsed inward. I called 911, heart pounding harder than it had since Fallujah. The fire department arrived within 15 minutes, siren screaming down the gravel. Sheriff's deputies came too. They treated it like arson from the start. I reviewed the camera feed again. 2 figures, hooded, fast, slipping through the tree line, carrying what looked like a red gas can. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. Sheriff's deputy recognized one of them immediately. Local high school kid, HOA volunteer. His parents were homeowners in Willow Ridge. When they brought the boy in the next day, his mom was crying. His dad looked ready to sue God himself. The kid just sat there, staring at the floor. Said nothing. I didn't press criminal charges, but I did file for full property damage compensation. Karen went on the defensive immediately, posting an emergency update to the HOA group claiming the fire was likely caused by electrical faults from the rancher's outdated infrastructure, and warned members to expect increased aggression as the legal case intensified. I posted the video publicly. 2 hooded kids, one carrying a gas can, time-stamped, overlaid with thermal cam. Thousands of shares. Local news picked it up. Headline, HOA war sparks alleged arson at private ranch. That same night, a neighbor I'd never met knocked on my door. Woman in her 60s, trembling, holding a foil-covered plate of brownies. "I just wanted to say," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was this bad." She left before I could respond. The tide was turning, but the HOA wasn't done. The next morning, a landscaping crew showed up unannounced. They claimed they were ordered by Willow Ridge Beautification Committee to bring park elements up to code. I told them they were trespassing. They said the order came directly from Karen. They'd already started cutting low branches and measuring the soil pH before I arrived. I called the cops again. This time, I pressed charges for trespassing and vandalism. Karen showed up in person as the crew was being escorted out. She pulled up in her white BMW SUV and stepped out like she was walking into a courtroom she owned. "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm just getting started." She waved a manila folder at me. "We have revised maps, new development plans, and community support. You think your lawsuits scare me?" "Karen," I said, stepping closer, "you built a public park on someone else's land, forged documents, encouraged trespassing, and now your volunteers are lighting fires. You should be scared, not of me, of the system you thought you could cheat." She didn't respond, just got back in her car and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the window. Rick filed for an expedited court order to begin demolition of all structures built without consent. Karen filed a counterclaim accusing me of intentional emotional distress to the HOA board. That one made Rick laugh so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "This is what desperation looks like," he said. "They're spiraling." We're almost there, but I didn't feel triumphant yet, because I knew exactly what cornered people were capable of. And I wasn't about to underestimate a woman with a god complex and a clipboard army. The court order came down on a Monday morning, printed on crisp white paper with the kind of bold lettering that made people sit up straighter. Order to cease unauthorized occupancy and demolish structures on private property. Stamped. Signed. Final. I framed it. Sheriff's deputies accompanied the demolition crew, neutral third-party contractors assigned by the court, out to the eastern slope of my land. They were quiet, efficient men with sunburned necks and, don't ask, just bulldoze energy. No HOA logos, no clipboard lectures, just hard hats, steel-toed boots, and wrecking gear. The first structure to go was the jungle gym. It groaned like a dying animal as the backhoe's metal claw ripped through its bright green bars. The slide snapped clean in half. Then came the benches, splintered like matchsticks. The rubber safety tiles peeled back like flesh. I watched from a distance, arms crossed, a mug of coffee in hand. Karen wasn't there, but Willow Ridge was. A few residents gathered behind the court-mandated buffer tape. Some recorded, others just stared. One man yelled "fascist" through a pair of binoculars. Another wept, actual tears, for a plastic turtle spring rider. The sheriff warned them to back off or be cited. They grumbled, but complied. I didn't say a word. I let the law do the talking. By day's end, the park was reduced to a pile of debris cordoned off by police tape and orange fencing. The crew hauled off the trash in 3 dumpsters. Left behind were deep claw marks in the soil and a rectangular patch of leveled earth that looked more like a scar than a field. Rick showed up just as the last truck pulled away. "Feels like a funeral," he said. I nodded. Good. That's exactly what it should feel like. The media swarmed in the next day. Drones, boom mics, local anchors in perfectly ironed jackets standing on what used to be the sandbox. Karen responded with a press release accusing me of waging a campaign of hate against families and erasing joy from the community. She even held a press conference outside the HOA office, flanked by a few loyal residents holding signs like "WE, Deserve Green Spaces, Not His Land, Our Park." I was done playing nice. I published the complete legal timeline on the "This Land Is Mine" page. Every filing, every photo, every email from Danielle. I included a side-by-side comparison of my real signature and the fake one they used on the forged authorization form. Then I uploaded the full video of the demolition, edited clean, narrated by Rick. It hit 1 million views in 4 days. What none of us expected was the community backlash turning inward. Turns out, the HOA had used reserve funds to build that park. No special vote, no line item, just a quiet budget shuffle under seasonal enhancement projects. Translation: they stole from their own residents to fund an illegal land grab. The whispers turned to yelling. Danielle leaked internal emails showing how Karen had dismissed multiple warnings about legal boundaries. In one email, a board member literally asked, "What if the landowner fights back?" Karen's reply: "We bury him in paperwork." That quote ended up on T-shirts. A group of residents called an emergency meeting to demand Karen's resignation. She showed up late, smug as ever, claiming the real enemy wasn't her, but outside agitators with no community spirit. She was booed off the stage. Within a week, a formal petition for leadership removal circulated, and it gained over 75% of signatures within the Willow Ridge community. That was the threshold needed to trigger a mandatory vote. Karen tried to invalidate the petition by citing a technicality in the bylaws. Rick responded by sending the board a notice of discovery, which essentially said, "Try it, and we'll drag your asses into open court with depositions under oath." They backed off. That Friday, a letter went out to all Willow Ridge residents. Karen Morton has been removed as HOA president, effective immediately. The residents elected Danielle as interim president. Her first act? A public apology, not just to me, but to the entire neighborhood. She held a press conference standing next to me. "I can't undo what was done," she said, "but I can promise that this HOA will never again use its power to trample individual rights. What happened to Mr. Westfield should never have happened to anyone." I shook her hand on live TV, not because we were friends, but because the truth deserved a handshake. Later that night, I sat on my porch watching the stars. Tom handed me a cold beer and leaned against the railing beside me. "Think it's over?" I took a sip, eyes on the dark horizon. Not yet, because the lawsuit was still active, and there were still damages to be paid. The courtroom felt colder this time. Maybe it was just the AC, or maybe it was because this hearing wasn't about boundaries anymore. It was about damage. Rick walked in like a man who already knew the outcome. Briefcase swinging, tie loose, legal pad tucked under his arm. He didn't wear that smug lawyer smirk you see on TV. Rick didn't need smirks. He had facts. Karen wasn't there. Her new legal team, because the last one had dumped her, looked like they hadn't slept since the injunction. Pale, twitchy types with overpriced watches and briefcases full of desperation. Danielle sat in the gallery, arms folded, face unreadable. The case was now John Westfield versus Willow Ridge Homeowners Association and Karen Morton personally. I was suing for damages, arson-related property loss, legal expenses, repair costs, emotional distress, and punitive damages for the forged document and coordinated trespass campaign. Rick laid it all out, clean, surgical. We showed the judge photos of the burned shed, the fence cuts, the forged signature, the fake budget allocations, Danielle's whistleblower files. A sworn affidavit from the former land surveyor who testified that the HOA clearly built outside its legally defined lot lines. Then came the police reports, the vandalism, the Facebook harassment campaign, even the trash-stuffed mailbox. It was petty, sure, but petty adds up. Karen's lawyers tried to pivot, claimed that the HOA acted in good faith based on faulty records, and that Ms. Morton was unaware of the true boundaries at the time of construction. Rick nearly laughed in the judge's face. He slid a printout across the table, the email from Karen. "If we move quickly, he won't notice." The judge didn't smile, but I swear his eyebrow twitched just enough to signal game over. The ruling came down later that afternoon. Full damages awarded. Karen was found personally liable for the forgery and bad faith actions. The HOA was ordered to pay restitution for property damages, lawyer fees, and loss of use. Total $2.4 million. 2.4. I didn't cheer, didn't pump my fists, or let out a cowboy yee-haw. I just sat there, feeling like I'd been holding a cinder block on my chest for months, and it had finally rolled off. Slowly. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones in my face, shouting questions. "How do you feel about the verdict? What will you do with the money? Do you think the community owes you an apology?" I said one thing. I just wanted them off my land. Danielle gave her own statement later. She announced the HOA would not appeal the ruling. Instead, they'd restructure their internal review policies, open financial records to all residents, and hold an open audit of every major expense in the last 3 years. Translation: Karen burned it all down, and now someone had to sweep up the ashes. And she vanished. Moved out of Willow Ridge a week after the ruling. Word is she sold her house fast, well below market, and relocated to Arizona. No farewell, no apology. Just gone. I should have felt satisfied. And I did. But not for the reasons you'd expect. It wasn't about the money. I'd use most of it to rebuild the eastern fence line, repair the fire damage, and restore the land that got torn up by backhoes and toddlers. The rest, I didn't know yet. But I knew this. The next time someone thought a quiet farmer was an easy mark, they'd think twice. The park was gone. The lies were exposed. The court had spoken. But something lingered. A silence in the community. A weird kind of shame. I noticed it at the gas station when people who once called me a monster suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. I noticed it in the cautious waves, the awkward good mornings from Willow Ridge dog walkers who now crossed the road when they passed my fence line. It wasn't just about me anymore. They'd trusted Karen, followed her, funded her. Now they were left picking up the pieces. And I was just a guy with a goat named Cletus and 5,000 acres of lessons learned the hard way. It took months for things to settle. The debris was gone, the fire damage repaired, and my eastern field started growing again, thanks to a fresh reseeding project and the irrigation upgrades funded by the lawsuit. Cletus, my goat, remained unbothered by it all, still screaming at shadows and eating things he shouldn't. Some things never change, but everything else had. I wasn't just the rancher anymore. Around town, people called me the guy who beat the HOA. Sometimes with admiration, sometimes with wariness. The myth grew faster than the hay bales in July, but I kept to myself. Always have. One quiet Saturday, Danielle stopped by. No cameras. No press, just her and a bottle of wine she said she owed me for surviving the insanity. We sat on the porch watching the sunset over the now emptied stretch of land where the illegal park once stood. We've started rewriting the HOA charter, she said. Transparency rules, budget accountability, community votes for everything over $5,000. I nodded. Good start. We're also including mandatory training for board members on property law and easement boundaries. I sipped my beer. Smart. Might have saved you a couple million. She gave a half laugh, then went quiet. Truth is, John, I thought the HOA was about keeping things clean, safe, neighborly. I never thought it could turn into this: you give someone a clipboard and no one to say no. You get a tyrant, I said. Doesn't matter if it's a government or a cul-de-sac. She nodded, then looked at me seriously. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Would you ever consider running for the board? I stared at her, stunned. You serious? We need people who've been on the other side, who understand boundaries. Literally, I thought about it, then shook my head. I'll stick to fences and goats. Politics gives me hives, she smiled. Fair enough. After she left, I stood alone for a while, watching the wind ripple through the grass. The land was quiet again, mine again, and that meant something. I never wanted to fight, never wanted headlines or courtrooms, or to be the poster boy for rural resistance. I just wanted what was mine to stay mine. And now, it would. The final court payment came through in late spring. I used part of it to fund a scholarship at the local high school for students interested in land stewardship, agriculture, or environmental law. Seemed fitting. Let the next generation learn early what happens when you cross the line and how to defend it. And that park, that land, I didn't rebuild. I let the grass grow back wild. No signs, no fences, no benches, just earth, just silence, just mine.